Hello, everyone. Welcome to class. I feel like it has been a little while since I have seen you all, so I am so delighted to be back in the classroom with you all. Welcome to today's Montblanc Inspire Writing class. So, speaking of what to have with you and writing instruments, I'm going to show quite a few different writing instruments today. The primary one that I'm going to use is not one that I've used in a lot of our classes, so I'm excited to show it off. I'm going to use the Classic, so it's a slightly smaller fountain pen compared to the ones that I'm usually using. And I'm going to use the fine nib, and you'll get to see a fun pop pink color. That's what I'm using, but I would recommend for you guys, whatever writing instrument you guys are naturally going to be using throughout the day. If you're going to write a letter, or, if we're thinking cursive here, so if you're doing your grocery list, or if you're doing thank you notes, whatever that writing instrument is, that's the one I want you guys to grab today, with the exception of you can do this with a bold nib. It will look different. So for today, I would suggest doing something that has more of a monoline tip to it. So roller balls, ball points, fine, medium, extra fine, any of those will work for today's class, or even a pencil will work. All right, I am going to switch our view over to our handouts today, and let's take a little look at what we are even going to be discussing today, and that is American cursive. And I didn't say a specific style of cursive. So in American history, we have had all sorts of different styles of American cursive. Perhaps some of you who have learned in school recognize Danielian or Zahner Bloser. This is the one that I learned in second and third grade. And today's class is going to focus, the techniques that I am going to teach you are going to be focused on what is known as the Palmer method. I'm not going to be an absolute purist when it comes to teaching this method, but each method of cursive has its own kind of methodology behind it. Well, the reason this is called Palmer method and not Palmer cursive is that Austin Palmer came up with the idea of like, hey, kids can copy and trace all day long, but it's not really what's going to help them be able to write quickly and for a long time without their hand hurting really legibly. And he wasn't as interested in everybody having the exact same form, but more the idea of being able to write for a long period of time without fatigue and having, beautiful form while you do it. Well, today's technique, my goal for you today is to feel like you've got a new tool in your toolbox that you can try out. I hope you guys are sitting at desks. If not, try this out later. But I am going, if humor me, if you will, we are going to try some new techniques in our writing today, because this is a method of writing. So what I want you to do is take your writing instrument. So go ahead and start. I'll see if I can write and ask questions at the same time. I'm going to turn my page here just so I can have a chance of having a decent slant here. So as you are writing, I want you guys to think about how you are holding your writing instrument, how often you are pausing to look at a form, or is your hand cramping up as you write? Do you feel like you can write pretty quickly? How are you sitting at the desk? Are your legs crossed, or are they sitting on the floor? Do you like the look of your handwriting? Do you feel like you have to lift your hand to move it quite a bit? So just go ahead and get a few sentences out. You can write large or small. I actually realized I probably should have put a space between these. We're just warming up. We're just getting ink on the page. This is as much for me as it is for you guys, just to get ink flowing. And sometimes it's the intimidation of getting ink on the page. You're like, okay, I'm feeling more natural. I'm feeling more comfortable with the page in front of me. Sit at the table or at your desk with your worksheets in front of you. And I want you guys to, now this is for right-handed or left. I'll walk you through both ways. If you are right-handed, I'm going to have you take the paper and turn it slightly to the left. Whoops, I'll help if I show you the paper. Slightly to the left, like this. And if you are left-handed, you're going to turn it opposite. So you've got like the little Montblanc emblem at the top there. All right. Now, depending on which way you have it tilted, I'm going to have you guys hold your arms above the table like this, and then just drop it. and see where they land on the desk. You can do that a couple times if you want to. Just hold it limp in front of you and drop it. Now I'm right-handed. I'm going to look at my elbow, and my elbow is just slightly off of the desk, which is great. I want this part of my arm to be on the desk. That's going to be really key for today. And my non-writing hand is going to be more active than it is in any other style of writing that I do, because my non-writing hand is going to be up in the corner, and my non-writing hand is going to be moving the paper around for me. So this hand, my writing hand, is not going to be doing as much of the moving the papers around, okay? So same if you're left-handed, your non-writing hand is going to help you move the paper for you. So you should have both arms on the desk in front of you. Then humor me for just a moment. And if you put your big arms back up, so hold your writing hand up. And I want you to hold your wrist straight up in the air like that. So limp hand, wrist up. And your pen goes in there. Like you're not doing much. Your pen could just fit right in that section there. It should be a really, really loose grip. Remember, we don't want to fatigue today. So our whole goal is to keep this hand being able to write for hours and hours and hours and hours. Our letter forms are never going to change. So we're keeping a really loose hand. So loose that if someone were to walk behind you while you're writing, they could pull that pen out of your hand. Now, when I am doing my copper plate where I dip pen calligraphy, to be honest, I often do have more of a death grip than I should. And this knuckle is almost always flexed. I'm not proud of that, but it's true. And I grip hard. But that's one of the first ways between my thumb and this knuckle that I fatigue and I get that cramp in the side of my hand, okay? So we're keeping a nice, open, loose grip with our hand here, okay? So this is key. Nice, open, loose grip. I'm just using these 3 fingers to hold it. Let me now show you, and you guys can follow along with me. When it comes to controlling our writing instrument, there are a few different ways that we can control our writing instrument. The first is with our fingers, and this is what most of us use, it's these muscles, right? So we're going to write with our fingers. Our fingers move back and forth, and I could do this up, down, up, down, up, down, like that, but it's kind of going to get cramped until if I don't move my hand. That's about as far as I can go. So it's really great for control. I've got nice control over the pen. The downside is that I'm going to cramp up a bit faster. And I've got limited range, right? So great for control, not so great for range, and not so great for longevity or fatigue, we'll call it. Okay, so that's using your fingers to write. And most of us do. That's the kind of our everyday writing is we use these muscles here. The second option is using your whole arm, also known as your shoulder. So with this method, I want you guys to lift your entire arm off of the page. So the only thing that's going to be touching is the nib and maybe these 2 fingers here, okay? But none of the rest of your arm is touching the page. And here, this is really, really great for if you want to do some really cool flourishes. You can move across the entire page. You can really move around. It's fantastic for flourishing. But let's try to do this same motion here where I'm going up, down, up, down, up, down. It's a little bit harder for these fine motor small letters if you have your whole arm off of the paper. So great for range, great for smooth letters, smooth writing if you're going big and fast, not great for control. So let's look at number 3, and that is going to be muscle or muscular or arm writing. And so here, it's this muscle here. That's why we want this one to be rested on the table. So if you guys make a fist, tighten that fist. This muscle here is, or if you put your arm back on the table and you make that fist, you'll kind of feel your arm raise up in that fleshy area. So what we're going to do, put that pen loosely back in your hand. Here, I'm not moving my hand and my finger motions. I'm just moving my arm. And I can kind of pivot back and forth on that fleshy part of my arm. I can go up and down, and it will give me a really consistent stroke. So let's go back to, and I'm going to turn my paper here. Sorry, it's making a little bit dizzy. But I'm going to put that pen, so the pen nib is touching, and this fleshy part of my arm is touching. And now I'm not going to move my fingers. I'm just moving my arm. And you'll see you actually have a lot greater range of motion. And these slant lines all automatically are going to be the same slant. So I just feel like it's a cheat. Once I figured this out, and I was like, oh, I can get consistent spacing and everything is on the same slant because you don't have the variability of your fingers. You're just using your arm there. Okay, so let me show you a couple tricks with this. Technically, back in the day, they would have had you write upright. And this just feels really unnatural to me. But if you really want to learn true Palmer method, you would keep your knuckles upright as you're writing so your arm can really just be flexing like on the flesh back and forth. If you want to learn this method, the best way to train your wrist not to flop over is put a coin or something on there as you write. And then you can practice keeping that wrist up and down or upright as you are writing. For me, I have found that I don't sacrifice too much control by turning my hand sideways and being able to still just pivot on that fleshy side of my arm, I suppose. But the other technique, if you're finding like if you are resting on the side of your hand and it's hard for you to have that range of motion, or maybe your palms are sweaty or something, the other trick is pull a card out of your sleeve, rest your hand on that card because these would have kind of a slick surface to it. And then you'll have that ability to slide nicely along the paper just using that fleshy part of your arm. This is like the key. I just love this trick of using your arm to get a nice smooth writing. All right, let's go ahead and move on. That's control and how we're sitting at the desk and how we've got our writing instruments in our hands. Let's look at number 2. And that is going to be our slant and our basic strokes. But let me give you a silly demonstration here using my husband's name. If I have some lines that are kind of going, all over the place, it doesn't look neat, right? Even just in regular printing, if I can make sure all of my lines are pointing in the same direction, it immediately looks cleaner, right? So we are going to think about, just using a consistent slant is automatically, even if the rest of your forms don't look great, it is automatically going to make a big difference in our writing. Now, with the style that we are learning today with American Cursive, there's basically 2 slants that we are thinking about. The one is that our arm automatically pulls down on, and if you've got your paper turned slightly, this is just kind of going back and forth with your arm pivoting on that muscle. That's going to be our main slant. And then to connect that main slant, we're either going to go over or under this connecting slant. So we'd go main slant, over, main slant, under, main slant, over, main slant, under. So you see how we have this down, over, down, up, down. You can kind of see these are the 2 slants. We got the main slant and the connecting slant between the 2. And your arm will do that for you. You do not need to pull the protractor out and check on the angle, because if you have your paper turned, your arm will automatically pull down, and as you shift over, you will get that nice consistent slant. So that's the cheat for today, is we're using our arm for that. Let's talk about cadence. And by that, I mean kind of like the rhythm that we are writing and when we pause. And that is what helps me get kind of a nicer way of writing, because I can think, I can write the word, what do we do? Little as an example. I can, try to use these muscles and do an okay job. But if I think about pausing, these little micro pauses, I will get a better form. So I'm going to think loop, top, sharp, top, sharp, top, sharp, top, loop, top, sharp, or loop, top. And again, this is trying to critique my work too much here, but it's these micro pauses that I'm still writing pretty quickly, but I'm allowing myself to have this little bump that gives me more of a distinction, and it helps me with even spacing between my letters. So let's try that together. We're going to write the word. You can do either little or mint is another great one. If you just think about bump, 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 bump. I like listen. I'll stop talking for a second so you can listen to the cadence of your pen as we're going over, down, over, down, over, down, under, down, over, down, sharp, top, out. I'll be quiet. Listen to your pen here. Thank you again, everyone, for participating in our class today. I truly hope that you enjoyed. I will close with a final poll for those of you who are still around, just to see how you guys enjoy practicing, because I hope you guys do put this to use, whether it is writing a letter to somebody or just practicing absolute gibberish on the page because it feels good to the mind and heart and soul to put ink on paper.